Welcome again. We begin with the latest coming out of Niger as the country's junta announces the closure of its airspace to neighboring countries, citing the fear of a military intervention by neighbors. The announcement was made by the military leadership, which took over power late July. Reading a statement on national television, a representative of the junta said it had information that a foreign power was preparing to attack Niger in coordination with countries of the Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas. He said there had been a pre-deployment of forces in 2 Central African countries in preparation for an intervention, but did not give details. Well, this comes as ECOWAS countries plan to meet this week to discuss the expiration of an ultimatum given the junta to reinstate Mohamed Bazoum as the country's president. A military intervention is one of the avenues being explored by ECOWAS countries, which are still deliberating the move. The coup leaders, on the other hand, show no signs of ceding power, even though junta leader Abdurrahmane Chiani had said that things would calm down, a political future could be discussed.
Military intervention in Niger. The planning of this war has been carried out. Pre-deployment of forces to take part in this war has begun in 2 Central African countries. The CNSP is closely monitoring the preparations for this proxy war, for which the ECOWAS mandate was merely a conduit. The CNSP is calling national and international opinion to witness and asserts that any state from which military action is directed against Niger will be considered a co-belligerent. Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighboring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today, Sunday, August 6, 2023, for all airports until further notice. Any attempt to violate national airspace will be met with an energetic and instantaneous response.
Prend à témoin l'opinion nationale et internationale et affirme que tout État à partir duquel une action militaire est dirigée contre le Niger.
In the meantime, thousands of supporters of the coup in Niger on Sunday flocked to a stadium in the capital, Niamey, once again declaring support for the military rulership. Out on the streets of Niamey, there were sporadic displays of support but no signs of opposition to the junta, which says it will not cave in to external pressure to stand down following the July 26th coup. Rippling cheers greeted every sentence of the speech read by the army representative to the packed crowd at the stadium. This is the 7th coup in West Africa in 3 years in the Sahel region. A major exporter of uranium and oil, Niger has been pivotal in a war with insurgents in the region, holding much importance for the US, Europe, China, and also Russia. Well, staying with developments in and around Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso, which also host military juntas, have vowed to send a joint delegation to Niger to express their solidarity. The delegation is expected today, and that's according to the Nigerian Foreign Ministry. Mali and Burkina Faso have both warned in a joint statement that they would consider military intervention as a declaration of war. The warning was read out on their national broadcasters a day after ECOWAS threatened to use force to reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum should the coup plotters not comply after 7 days. Well, despite Western countries backing ECOWAS in its response to the Niger political crisis, Italy has called for ECOWAS to extend its deadline to the junta leaders to reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum. The Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said earlier today, the only way is the diplomatic one. I hope that the ultimatum of ECOWAS, which expired last night, will be extended today. He said the extension is necessary as the coup leaders refuse to meet the deadline for restoring President Bazoum, who remains under military detention. And it's almost 2 weeks since the military took over power in Niger, and the threat of a regional war dangles in the air. Our next report by our Foreign Affairs correspondent Amarju Bani highlights the developments in and around the country since the coup.
It has been nearly 2 weeks since a section of the Niger army toppled the government of Mohamed Bazoum and installed General Abdurrahmane Tiani as the country's new military leader. But it is a development that has spurred regional power ECOWAS to move against it. Hours after the junta announced its takeover, Ecowas chair and Nigeria's president, Bola Tinubu, condemned the coup and called on the coup plotters to immediately release the democratically elected president. The coup would be the seventh on the continent, the fourth in West Africa, and the closest to Nigeria. A week later, Ecowas convened an extraordinary meeting in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, where they not only again condemned the coup, but also announced sanctions on Niger Republic. Among the sanctions itemized in Ecowas communique were the closure of all air and land borders against Niger, the imposition of a no-fly zone over the country, freezing of Niger's accounts in the West African Economic Union, as well as in regional banks, and an ultimatum to the junta to reinstate Mohamed Bazoum as president. Bazoum, still under close surveillance by the junta, chaired ECOWAS' decision, calling on the regional power as well as other foreign powers to ensure his reinstatement. ECOWAS also began considering military intervention in Niger. ECOWAS' 7-day ultimatum expires soon, and there's been no word on what happens next. Security consultant Dr. Oluwaseyi Adetayo says ECOWAS options are now limited.
When you are responding to coup d'etat or to unconstitutional government in a country, there are four ways or four approaches to this. One is for you to make a very hard, rejection. Another one is a soft rejection. The third one is soft acceptance, and the last one is hard acceptance.
But other analysts call for caution. The Nigerian junta last week condemned ECOWAS sanctions as inhumane, and the Mali and Burkina Faso juntas say any military intervention by ECOWAS will be seen as a declaration of war.
I thought we should be more circumspect in deciding military actions, particularly given the fact that in the last 10 or so years, our own military have had issues trying to resolve the insecurity in Nigeria, particularly in the northeast. And as of today, the Nigerian military, I think it's in 32 out of the 36 states. So already our military is overstretched.
Later in the week, on the streets of the Nigerian capital, Niamey, supporters of the junta protested ECOWAS sanctions, celebrated the evacuation of foreign nationals from the country, and the 63rd anniversary of Niger's independence from France. The self-declared new leader of Niger says the junta will not bow to pressure to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. General Abdurrahman Tichani later said Niger is on a transitional path to democratic elections. In his statewide televised address, he said they'd always been humble enough to listen to all parties concerned and open to dialogue, so that once everyone's emotions have subsided, they can work together to create the conditions for a peaceful transition, leading in a short and reasonable time to general elections. So ideally, it does appear the junta has a plan to restore civilian rule. Whether it will include Mohamed Bazoum is yet to be decided. The onus now is on ECOWAS to explore more options to convince the junta out of power, or unilaterally prepare for war, not only with Niger, but with Mali and Burkina Faso, which have declared support and allegiance to each other. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
Joining me now to discuss the developments is former Nigerian ambassador to Benin Republic, Ambassador Lawrence Obishaki. He joins me from Ile-Ife in Osun State. Ambassador, thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're still awaiting ECOWAS meeting on the expiration of the ultimatum to the Niger junta to reinstate President Bazoum. But in the meantime, Niger has closed its airspace because of rumors. I think it says that a foreign power is planning, with the coordination of countries from ECOWAS, to sort of attack the country, a sort of military intervention. What do you make of this?
Thank you very much for consulting me. War is not attack. War is attack. And it's not the best way of resolving differences, especially among brothers or sister countries. Nigeria and Benin share about 95% of its population together. Where you have the Hausas, about 70%, you have the Fulani, you have the Kanuris, you have the Tuaregs. Those are Ishua Arabs. They share together. It will be a fratricidal war. This is why normally we diplomats don't support going to war. But since Ecowas seems to have declared it, it's normal that Benin should close its airspace so that it knows if anybody that crosses it is an enemy and we're liable to attack. Remember that Niger still controls its territory, even though it may not be a powerful country. But as a diplomat, I will always support peaceful resolution of disputes, even though the Ecowas has among its clause to go against any undemocratic or violent change of regime. Now, there are so many questions about this imminent invasion, in quotes. One, why again Niger alone? Because some members of ECOWAS have had military putsch in regime change, like Guinea, like Burkina Faso, Mali, and how about even Chad? It's a kind of military change. So these are questions, and when you have questions like this, it calls for, a serious consideration of actions. Well, this will be what I call uneasy calm that may presage war indeed, but are we to go to war against?
But Ambassador, when you look at the body language of the junta, do you think that they've actually been open to dialogue and the number of people that we've sent to speak to them? And also, while weighing in on that, what options do you think are before the ECOWAS leaders as they meet this week?
Really, giving ultimatum, as somebody was quoting former president of the United States of America, a powerful country, that Barack Obama, when you give ultimatum, it means that is the day beyond which you will take social action. It's risky because you are taking ultimatum, you are calling for ultimatum on behalf of a group of persons, and now practically all other countries have said they are not prepared to go to war. Let's look at them. Let's take a number. Of course, those under military regime, Burkina Faso, Mali, they will not go to war. In fact, they will go to war in support of Niger junta against ECOWAS. The regime in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, they will not support us, and we have heard that Benin has opened its border. You know that Algeria is not in support, and Niger is such a strategic country in the war, as my senior ambassador, Zokeshi, has said. Niger is very strategic to us, strategic to those who are our partners in fighting Boko Haram. We need more supporters. We know that it's a military putsch, but there's nothing you cannot dialogue. We always support dialogue instead of going to war at this time. There are other things, options where we have cut electric supply, although that's a dangerous move because it will boomerang against Nigeria. Hey, it could boomerang. It could be. At least they are sending some signals that look, we depend on Nigeria. We even told Niger has started damming the place about 5 or 6 years ago, but we didn't react like this. Are we reacting in support of our bilateral agreement that Niger will not dam, which has happened to about 7 years ago? But then we have a whole body working in the Niger Basin Authority. That's its regime. It has its own authorities. Are they in support of cutting electricity? These are things. But the options open to dialogue is an option. It's that still send people there. But you said the regime has received our delegates, even though it may not be at a higher level. There is also part of diplomacy. The level at which you receive delegation also is an indication of your disposition towards them. But they did not, they could have refused Ecowas landing in Niger. They control their own airspace, I believe, no matter however weak they think they are. But a man's castle, a man's house is his own castle. And in war, you never know who is there. Look at the Ukraine and the almighty Russia. Russia, we're told, said in a matter of days. But now 1 year has passed. And Russia is still fighting. And Ukraine is still defending itself. Some at times brilliantly well. So Japan and the three parties who were fighting the Second World War, Mussolini's Italy, Japan, and Hitler, they didn't know that Hiroshima and Nagasaki will suffer the greatest disaster of nuclear bomb. So war is an accelerated form of change. That's Jean-Jacques Giraudoux, the French novelist. Things can work so quickly. And more importantly now, we are hearing that the Russian-based Wagner Group may be in support of the junta.
Indeed. Ambassador, as we sort of wrap up, I just wanted to quickly get your thoughts on what you think the position of the people is. Do you think that they're happy with this, with what has happened? And do you see a reinstatement of President Bazoum?
Well, we pray you'll be reinstated, but I doubt now. You saw the people coming out, unless it's photoshopping, that there's support. Africa is suffering. And this is a lesson for us, even in Nigeria. Our politicians must be sensitive to the suffering of the people. You see, it is so easy to get isolated from the realities. Our own reality now, I think our war should be war against poverty in Nigeria.
Okay. All right.
We have to tone down the rhetorics. That's my advice. Nigeria should tone down the rhetorics. The Ecowas we are fighting for, majority of them say they are not prepared to go to war. Neither do you think Nigerians, who are 75 to 80% of Niger, who have blood, who share blood. Blood is thicker than water. The Tuaregs are there, the Shu Arabs, same people, the Hausas, the Fulanis, the Kanuris are there. We must be constructivist. It's not a realist war. Let's go to war. Everything is war and money. And
all right, Ambassador. Threading with caution. We appreciate your time, former Nigerian ambassador to Benin Republic, Ambassador Lawrence Obishaki. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Former ambassador, thank you so much. God bless Nigeria.